at the beginning of my doctorate, he was really hesitant about AI, and he's a member of the church that I'm a pastor at, and so I think it's good to hear from a congregant's perspective, maybe some of the concerns, and some of the critiques or some of the fears of AI being used in pastoral ministry. And I'll let him kind of. I have some questions that we'll go through together, but let me bring him up on stage and let him introduce himself. Let me make sure you're not muted. We're still working on all the tech stuff, so again, I apologize. Yep. But okay, I hear you. So yeah, let me switch my view here.
Perfect.
And so thank you, Corey, for being with us on the inaugural first live stream for AI for pastors. And you're not even a pastor, and so you made it on week 1. And so thank you for being here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go into some of these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Corey Evans. I am the co-founder of Creative on Commission. We write biblical scripts for scripts, plays, kids programs, specifically designed for and tailored for what the churches specifically want or need, whichever church we're dealing with. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. And so you are a member of the church, and I'm, this is week 1, so I'm not trying to dox everybody, but we are a part of a church in North Dakota, and yeah, so as I'm thinking through this whole concept of should churches use AI, should pastors use AI, obviously this whole YouTube channel is centered around AI for pastors, and so I kind of take the affirmative that it is okay for pastors to use AI. But I'm not disillusioned. I know that there are people that are hesitant or concerned, or they get that icky feeling when they hear that pastors are using artificial intelligence. And so I just think back to some of our initial conversations when I told you that was going to be the study of my doctorate. And so maybe just I'm curious your perspective. I think I've swung you a little bit, but maybe walk us through how some of that changed, where you first were when AI first started coming around, and to where you are now. And then we'll tie that specifically into kind of church ministry.
Certainly. Oh, I think for me, I'm a person who probably spends too much time, listening to politics and news and all that kind of stuff. But that can really cause a fear when you're hearing all of the, well, this terrible thing happened with AI, and then that terrible thing happened with AI. I mean, I can't even tell you how many stories and things I've seen in different ways where people used it in a terrible way. But then also just certain things that have popped up in, and not to get super technical into it, but like the idea of like AI basically doing a deep dive into the internet every single time you ask it a question, and it can only be as smart as what is actually on the internet for it to get information from. And if a lot of people, if people keep putting wrong information on the internet, that's what it has to pull back on. And then it was like, and then going a step further, if that is then posted on the internet, it only feeds more of the wrong information to pull from. And so in a biblical sense, like if you're sitting there wondering, okay, well, why did this happen in the Bible? I'm really confused about this thing, and let me go ahead and use ChatGPT. That's the famous one that everyone knows. I mean, brand recognition, they hit the nail on the head. But
sometimes you just gotta be first.
Right. But like if you ask ChatGPT, hey, why is this verse in this verse? Jesus says this. I don't understand it. Why? Why do you say that? What does it mean? And there's a big fear in me that if it gives me the wrong answer and I just run with it and I'm just like, oh, okay, cool, fantastic, then I'm misled. Then anyone who I parrot that information to is misled. And then it's bad enough in small things, but if in big foundational things, that can go really bad. And on top of that, with pastors, if they're doing that, and they have whole, or just church leaders in general, they have whole flocks that they're leading, and if they get off and then they lead a whole bunch of other people off, and so that's really dangerous. And so, like you said, admittedly, I had to admit that, all right, I don't consider myself a skeptic anymore per se. I'd say I'd fall somewhere in the middle. There's still a lot about AI I don't like, and that I don't trust. Although I sadly have been convinced into using it a lot. But there's still a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of things that I won't use, like, which, I mean, we could get into that, but the I think that I have learned a lot through conversations, specifically with you, on you have to be very careful about what you're prompting and how you're prompting it, giving it certain parameters, like what is the what is the North American Baptist perspective on this verse, and then it would bring up not just any random any random thing. Well, this is the Mormon perspective, or the Catholic perspective, or the Protestant perspective, whatever you're looking for. It pulls something random, or just some random perspective off of Reddit that someone wrote one time and they were crazy. But it can give specifically, and then also often telling it to cite your sources, so that you can then go through the link, and you can tell it, give me a link of your source, because I don't necessarily trust you just because you said it. Then you can read for yourself. And I think that's my big thing that I do now. Like I say, I use it a lot. I basically use it as a souped up Google. And I know that there's lots of people, you see on the internet, well, there's people building businesses with AI. Good for them. I use it as a super Google. Maybe I'm lame. Sure. I don't care. I use that, and it has helped me a lot in that, and speeding up processes with my work, and being able to help customers and whatnot.
Yeah, it is interesting. You brought up a couple of interesting points. So yeah, the nature of, or I would say, and it really is, the skill of crafting prompts is a whole new thing. And so I will let any watchers know, we actually are currently working on an ebook to tackle exactly that, how you as a pastor can craft prompts to be able to kind of maximize the results and the effectiveness of the results you're going to get back. The result that you get back from any AI platform, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, it's only going to be as good as the prompt that you give it. And so the example that Corey gave of, give me an interpretation of this verse, or explain this verse to me. Well, if you don't tell it, and this may be controversial, but we all have a bias. Mm-hmm. Whether you want to admit it or not, we all have a bias. And so you need to tell the tool the bias that you want it to have, or give it multiple biases and say, compare this between this bias and this bias. And so if you are, for me, I'm a Baptist pastor. And so if I'm doing some research on a passage, I want to be no different than the commentaries that I have are in the line of thinking of that I am. And I have, you'll have various different commentaries to kind of, but it's the same thing. So what's the version of the commentary that you're looking for? And we don't want to live in an echo chamber, but it's actually easier than ever to get competing views. In fact, in the tutorial that we're going to go through in just a little bit, one of the prompts I have prepared is actually to compare two different competing kind of theologians on a specific thing. And so I think we'll get to see that together. But so Corey, thank you for that. And you mentioned, I think what we're all starting to see, even though you were hesitant at first, as you started using it, you saw how much easier it could make certain things, and now you're probably, to some degree, almost a daily user of AI. Now there's a difference between being a daily user of AI and it being used in the church, and so that's where there's some differences. But again, going back to, for pastors, whether you choose to use it or not, your congregation is going to use it. And so you need to be prepared. You need to understand what's going, because there will be some jobs that get displaced. There's going to be things that happen in the near future regarding AI, and you need to be prepared and equipped to be able to navigate those waters for the health of your congregation. And so, yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring Corey in to kind of speak to this from a congregant standpoint. So, Corey, let me ask you this: do you have any, what are your thoughts regarding a pastor using AI? Let's just dump that on you.
It like you said earlier, it really depends on what they're using it for. If it's writing the entire sermon for them, that's a problem. If it's speeding up their research, I know that you've talked about before how you can how you can upload every sermon that you've ever done, and then you can use it as like an assistant, like, hey, I know I'm going to be preaching on this topic. I need I know that I've preached on this before. Please pull up every time I've talked on this topic before. I was like, and it can go through your backlog and say, okay, these are the times that you spoke on this topic. That way you can then read through it, and you can kind of go from a starting point of and where you were before, and that's awesome. That's great. And then like you said, that it gives you more time for other ministries, with people, counselings and what have you. However, like I said, if someone's leaning on it too heavily, and it's if your pastor is like, oh, what's the perspective on this? Cool, writing that down. Okay, what's the perspective on that? All right, cool. Or give me a format for my sermon, and that way I can just plug and here. Cool, I'm gonna plug and play. Okay, I'm gonna say that, and that in that part I'm gonna say this line here. That's very concerning, because I don't believe there's a heart there. There's the Holy Spirit's not there. It's just the cold words and a cult of personality. And it really depends on the pastor. It really depends on what they're using it for. And the unfortunate thing with that is that's all behind closed doors. So all we can do as a congregation is just trust that you as a pastor, or not necessarily you, but whoever the pastor
hopefully not,
is using it effectively and I can't think of the word,
ethically.
Thank you. Ethically. And we just have to trust. And I mean, and you would hope that you have a certain amount of trust in your pastor. Otherwise, why are you at that church?
Sure.
But unfortunately, there has been history of people. Pastors are human, and whether it is intentionally or maybe or sometimes unintentionally, they have gone astray, and even before AI. So I can see someone using it without the congregation's knowledge in a very unethical way, and that's terrifying, because there really is no check and balance now, that unless you just say you put out a statement as a church and say, hey, at this church we don't believe in using AI. I mean, then you're still trusting that they're not actually using the AI and
Sure.
They're following the thing. But I mean, at a certain point, I guess it goes back to you have to trust. But,
yeah, and you so that's actually really interesting, and there's a lot of, man, as we're talking, I'm just thinking, like, that's a future video. That's a future video. That's a future video. So we do have a bunch of videos scheduled for the future, and a couple things that I want to make sure that as pastors and ministry leaders, that we're going to tackle, and I think are important, is your church should develop a AI use policy. Meaning, even if it's not something that's like put out publicly, but you have it for staff. Staff needs to know, hey, this is how we allow AI to be used, and here's how we're not allowing AI to be used. Because then you're creating the parameters where it, unfortunately, it's only going to help you and your church to know what the guidelines are. For it to be explicitly written and understood as policy that pastors write their own sermons. Like, it sounds silly. Write it down, immortalize it in a policy. It's only going to help you, and it's only going to help your congregation, because your congregation is going to know, hey, this is something that we believe in. Yes, there's benefits for artificial intelligence. Yes, there's ways that we can use it for copy editing, for creating a graphic in this way, or doing this little thing. But we as a church believe it is inappropriate and wrong for us to use it in this way. And then you define those parameters, and that would be a great thing. And I do have I have templates for that exact policy that we can certainly walk through in one of these live streams. And again, I just want to backtrack for a moment. My hope for this YouTube channel is not a weekly hour-long lecture. Like, you can get that anywhere. It's not going to be a good use of my time to do that. I want to be able to help you guys as individuals. And so my dream, my hope for this channel is that what I would love to see is for you to come in here into the comments and say, hey, I'm struggling. I've heard of other people who have been able to use Chat GPT to create a title slide for their sermon series, and I don't know how to do that. I would love to then on stream be able to go through and walk you through those steps, and then I'll probably just give you the image after. And so I would love to see that back and forth, almost more of a live stream tutorial or live stream tutoring. What a great opportunity that would be for a community like this. Just work through those things together, and you get to learn in the process as well. And so all that to say, AI policy should be a part of your church's policy manual at some point here in the near future, because it's only getting integrated into more and more. Google's Workspace is now completely integrated with AI. All the new iPhone updates have Apple Intelligence baked into it. And so when you're getting emails from people, there's a good chance that it's being edited by AI now and being reworded. And, so what policy? What's your policy on those types of things? So that's all future. Couple other, and we're gonna transition into more of a tutorial here in just a moment. I'm gonna have Corey stay on, and we'll hopefully maybe try to provide some witty banter back and forth as we do this. But I want this to be casual. I want this to be laid back. This is not, we're sitting on a couch together and we're talking about AI. But, I want this to be a very comfortable feel. But some things that we're looking to do in the future, some videos, my wife actually just pitched an idea to me this afternoon. And I was like, that's good. We need to do that. Is how we can explain and prepare our children for artificial intelligence. And so I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I'm probably going to bring one of my kiddos on stream and kind of use this platform and explain artificial intelligence to my child, and hopefully give you guys some pointers, because children are especially, no judgment, but the iPad kids, right? My kids love screens. My kids play video games. AI is going to be in their hands very quick. It's not long. I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about how these AI engines can run on little computers that are the size of a deck of cards, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper to do. It's not long before your kid's Elmo toy is going to have a completely, conversational AI engine in them. That's terrifying. Where Elmo's going to be having full-out conversations with your kids. If you're on social media, you already know that we can't trust the images that we see anymore. You can't trust the videos that we're seeing anymore. We're probably a couple of years away from it being a deciding factor in a court case whether or not a video is real or not. And so how do we prepare our kids for that? Because it's going to happen. And so what What a great opportunity. And that's going to impact you as pastors. Congregants are going to, you're going to have, married couples divorcing because a husband or wife was found having inappropriate conversations with an AI chat bot. What do you as a pastor do about that? And so these are all good conversations, and we need a space like this to be able to process some of that. And so if you have questions, leave them in the comments, even if it's after this live stream is up. We'll be monitoring the comments, and love to figure out some future content for you guys, what you guys are wanting to see the most. And so with that, I'm going to ask Corey one last question before we jump in the tutorial. Corey, real succinct, and Corey's going to be a regular on this stream, and so you'll get to know him more. And succinct is challenging for Corey. But succinctly, what's your biggest concern? We don't want this to be just an AI hype channel, but there's real concerns here. Corey, what's your biggest concern regarding AI in general? Not necessarily just in the church, but just in general.
Honestly, just fake.
Say Skynet. Skynet.
Skynet. Absolutely. They're going to take over overlords. No. Honestly, just falsity in general. Falsity in images. Falsity in the news. I mean, my business is all about creating writings and scripts of different kinds for churches. And like I said, I mentioned one of the things that we refuse to use it for is we refuse to just let it write the script for us. It might help us do research, but we will not let it write because there's no heart there. And it's not. And there's people out there that are just using AI to write a book, pump it out, write another one, pump it out, and they try to get as much money as possible. And it's like, no, that is not how we should be doing things. That's not. There's no heart. There's no soul. There's if you're looking at a biblical perspective, there's no Jesus. But yeah, but there's a lot of just fakeness and falsity, and it just and it would take so long to go into all of the feelings, and I'm trying to be succinct. I'm great at that. But it feels wrong. Sure. And I think that there is the Holy Spirit is pushing back on some of that, saying, this doesn't feel real. But anyway, I'm stopped there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the good can be better and the bad can be worse. And so it's never been easier to make false things than it is right now. And so, which is one of the reasons why I think it's important for pastors and the church to be involved in this conversation. If it's only the world in the driver's seat of this new technology that's not going away, I mean, we're kind of conceding to a fight there. I think it's important for pastors to be involved in this conversation, for the Christian church to be involved in this conversation. And so, awesome. Well, thank you, Corey. I'm going to keep you on here while we do some of this tutorial.